To Taiwan now, where investigations are underway after the country's worst rail disaster in decades. At least 50 people were killed and more than 140 injured when a train smashed into a construction truck that had slid onto the tracks. It happened at the start of Taiwan's 4-day tomb sweeping holiday. It's a time when families often take the train to return to their hometowns and pay their respects at the graves of their elders.
Prayers as bodies are transferred to funeral homes. And for those lucky to be alive, they recount a scene of chaos. We heard the sound of a collision. As we heard the collision, all the passengers in the train were thrown upside down.
All of a sudden, I just fell from my seat to the ground. I hit my head and saw it was bleeding.
This train was packed with nearly 500 people, with many cramming into the aisles without a seat. But just as the train entered a narrow tunnel, it slammed into a truck, tearing the front carriages apart. Authorities allege the truck from a nearby construction site slipped onto the tracks after the driver left the handbrake off. Prosecutors have issued an arrest warrant for the construction site manager. Rescue workers describe a confronting picture of the wreckage. We found that dead bodies of the victims in the front carriage were stacked on top of each other, and the carriage was twisted. It's Taiwan's worst rail disaster in decades, and the government says flags will fly at half-mast for 3 days of mourning. Many of those on board the train were planning to celebrate the long weekend in which many Taiwanese return to their home villages to clean the graves of their elders. Authorities have begun a strict investigation into the catastrophe.
DW correspondent Joyce Lee is standing by for us in Hualien at the funeral home. Joyce, good to see you. As we heard, many families on the train were heading home for Taiwan's tomb sweeping holiday. Now they're identifying the bodies of loved ones killed in this crash. How are they coping?
It is a heartbreaking scene here at the funeral home. Many families are devastated after seeing the bodies of their loved ones. There are a total number of 50 victims so far by the official figures, and 46 of the bodies have been identified already. And some of them are so torn apart that they are unrecognizable, and the police have to perform DNA tests and fingerprint tests to help the identification process. And among the 50 victims, the youngest one is only 4 years old. She is a 4-year-old girl, and there are 3 American nationals and a 28-year-old French national among the dead. So the authorities are still trying to get in touch with their families.
Sounds like an absolutely awful scene there. As investigators comb through the scene, what new details are emerging at this point?
So a crane truck slid down a hillside and hit the train that was passing by the tunnel nearby. It was found that the construction site, there wasn't any guardrail, and it was believed that the crane truck wasn't parked properly, and it caused the tragedy. And the person in charge of the construction project has already been arrested, and he is on bail. If he is found guilty, he would be in prison for up to 5 years.
What more can you tell us about how Taiwan as a nation is mourning the lives lost in the accident?
Taiwan is very shocked and very saddened by the incident, because this is the second train derailment incident in 3 years. And it happened on the first day of a long weekend for the tomb sweeping festival. It is supposed to be a time for family reunion, and yet this tragedy happened on the first day. A lot of volunteers from different religious groups came to Hualien County to offer emotional support and even financial support to the families of the victims. And President Taiwan also came in the morning to see the families of the victims as well as the heavily injured.
Poignant scenes from Taiwan there. DW correspondent Joyce Lee, thank you.